A chance encounter and an intimate conversation. Discover how an accidental ride changed lives and a company. First, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more surprising stories like this one. The sun was setting on the horizon of New York City, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink as Emily Thompson, a 28-year-old marketing analyst, hurriedly left the imposing Tech Future building. Her steps echoed through the nearly empty parking lot, mixing with the distant sound of the city's chaotic traffic. The day had been particularly exhausting, with endless meetings and tight deadlines that seemed to multiply every hour. Emily sighed deeply, feeling the weight of fatigue on her shoulders. Her long brown hair, usually well-groomed, was slightly disheveled after hours hunched over reports and spreadsheets. Her honey-colored eyes, usually bright and alert, were now clouded with fatigue. Distracted by thoughts about the unfinished project she had left behind, Emily didn't even notice that she was approaching the wrong car. It was a black sedan, very similar to her own vehicle. Without hesitation, she opened the passenger door and threw herself into the seat, letting out a sigh of relief. "What a day!" she exclaimed, closing her eyes and letting her head fall back against the headrest. It was at that moment that a male voice, soft and with a touch of amusement, broke the silence. "Tough day, huh?" Emily's eyes suddenly opened, her heart racing as she realized her mistake. Next to her in the driver's seat was a middle-aged man she had never seen before. He had a gentle smile on his face and blue eyes that conveyed a comforting calm. I'm sorry," she stammered, feeling her face burn with embarrassment. "I thought it was my car." The man laughed softly, a sound that immediately calmed Emily's nerves. "Don't worry," he said. "It happens to the best of us, especially after a long day like this one seems to have been." Something in his voice, in the way he spoke, made Emily relax a little. Maybe it was the fatigue, maybe the need to vent, but she found herself smiling back. "You have no idea," she replied, running her hand through her hair in a nervous gesture. "Sometimes I feel like I work in a war zone, not a tech company." The man tilted his head, seeming genuinely interested. "Want to talk about it? Sometimes talking to a stranger can be therapeutic." Emily hesitated for a moment, but something about this man made her feel safe. She nodded slowly. "You know what? Why not? It's not like my day could get any stranger, right?" The man laughed again, a warm sound that made Emily smile too. "So, tell me," he said, turning slightly in his seat to face her better. "What makes your job a war zone?" And so, Emily began to talk. She told him about the impossible projects, the unrealistic deadlines, the ever-increasing expectations from management. She spoke about competitive colleagues and the constant feeling of always being one step behind. "It's like no one up there understands what we go through down here," she said, not knowing she was venting to the company's CEO himself. "They just want results, results and more results. But we're people, not machines." The man listened attentively, asking insightful questions from time to time. He seemed genuinely interested in understanding Emily's frustrations, offering subtle advice and words of encouragement. As she spoke, Emily felt a weight being lifted from her shoulders. It was as if, by sharing her concerns with this kind stranger, she was regaining some control over her professional life. After almost an hour of conversation, Emily looked at her watch and widened her eyes. "Wow, I didn't even notice the time fly. I need to go, my mum must be worried." The man smiled understandingly. "Time flies when we're in good company," he said. "I hope our conversation has helped a little." Emily smiled back, feeling lighter than she had in hours. "It helped much more than you can imagine," she replied. "Thank you for listening. You transformed my day." "It was my pleasure," he replied, still maintaining his anonymity. "Sometimes all we need is someone to listen to us." Emily nodded, opening the car door. Before leaving, she turned to the man one last time. "I didn't even ask your name," she said, a little embarrassed. The man smiled mysteriously. "Let's leave it at that for now. Who knows, maybe our paths will cross again?" With a last grateful smile, Emily got out of the car and walked towards her own vehicle. As she drove home, she couldn't stop thinking about the kind stranger who had completely transformed her day. Little did she know that this unexpected encounter was about to change her life in ways she could never have imagined. In the days following the unusual encounter in the parking lot, Emily found herself frequently thinking about the kind stranger. There was something about him, a blend of wisdom and kindness, that intrigued her deeply. She wondered if she would ever see him again, although New York City was too big to nurture hopes of another casual encounter. A week later, on a particularly busy Wednesday, Emily decided to take a coffee break. The perfect aroma, a cozy coffee shop a few blocks from Tech Future, was her favorite refuge on stressful days. As she pushed open the glass door, the comforting aroma of freshly roasted beans enveloped her, bringing an immediate sense of relief. While waiting in line, her eyes wandered distractedly around the place. It was then that her heart skipped a beat. Sitting at a corner table, absorbed in reading a newspaper, was him, the man from the parking lot. Emily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Should she approach him? What if he didn't recognize her? Before she could make a decision, the man looked up from the newspaper and their eyes met. A smile of recognition lit up his face, and with a gesture, he invited her to join his table. Emily felt her cheeks flush as she approached. "What a pleasant surprise," he said, folding the newspaper and setting it aside. "It seems fate decided to bring us together again." Emily smiled, feeling strangely at ease. Who would have thought? New York may be a giant city, but sometimes it feels like a village. "Please, sit down," he offered, indicating the chair across from him. "Let me guess, cappuccino?" Emily laughed, impressed. "How did you know?" "Intuition," he winked, an amused sparkle in his eyes. "Actually, it's what most people order at this time of day. I'm Michael, by the way." "Emily," she replied, extending her hand for a handshake. His touch was firm and warm. "It's good to finally know your name, Michael." They fell into easy and lively conversation, as if they were old friends reuniting after years apart. Michael had a way of speaking that made Emily feel completely at ease, mixing intelligent humor with insightful observations about life and work. "So, how are things in the war zone?" he asked with a playful smile, referring to the description she had given of her work environment. Emily sighed, but there was a touch of optimism in her voice. "A little better, actually. That conversation we had helped me gain a new perspective. I'm trying to communicate more clearly with my team and establish healthier boundaries." Michael nodded approvingly. "I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes all we need is a small adjustment in our approach to see big changes." As the conversation flowed, Emily found herself increasingly intrigued by Michael. He spoke about business and technology with a depth that suggested years of experience, but also demonstrated a surprising understanding of employees' daily struggles. "You seem to understand corporate challenges very well," Emily commented, curious. "What area do you work in?" For a moment, a shadow seemed to pass over Michael's face, but it was quickly replaced by his characteristic smile. "Let's say I have quite a bit of experience in the corporate world, but today I prefer to focus on projects that make a difference in people's lives." Before Emily could inquire further, her phone vibrated with an urgent message from work. She looked at the screen and then at Michael, torn between duty and the desire to continue the conversation. "Duty calls?" Michael asked gently. Emily nodded, a little disappointed. "Unfortunately, yes. There's an emergency meeting and—" "No need to explain," Michael interrupted with an understanding smile. "The corporate world doesn't stop, does it?" As Emily gathered her things, a sudden idea occurred to her. "Michael, I know it might seem bold, but would you like to have dinner with me one of these days? To continue our conversation?" Michael's face lit up with a warm smile. "I'd love to, Emily. How about Friday? I know a great Italian restaurant in Manhattan." They exchanged phone numbers and arranged the details. As Emily hurried back to the office, her heart was beating a little faster, a mixture of excitement and anticipation taking over her. The days that followed passed in a blur of activity at work, but Emily could hardly wait for Friday. There was something about Michael that intrigued and attracted her, a combination of maturity, intelligence, and gentleness that she had never encountered before. When Friday finally arrived, Emily found herself nervous for the first time in years. She carefully chose an elegant but not too formal black dress and spent extra time fixing her hair and makeup. The restaurant Michael had chosen was charming, small, cozy, and with a subtle romantic atmosphere. When she arrived, he was already there, waiting at the entrance. Dressed in a well-cut suit, Michael looked even more charming than Emily remembered. "You look beautiful," he said, greeting her with a soft kiss on the cheek. The dinner was magical. The food was delicious, the wine perfect. But what really made the evening special was the conversation. They talked about their lives, their dreams, their hopes for the future. Michael told fascinating stories about his travels around the world, while Emily shared her ambitions in marketing and technology. As the night progressed, Emily felt an increasingly strong connection with Michael. It was as if she had known him for years, not days. When they finally said goodbye late at night, there was a silent promise that this would not be their last encounter. In the taxi on the way home, Emily couldn't stop smiling. She had the feeling that something important had begun that night, something that could change her life in ways she could barely imagine. Little did she know that, as her taxi drove away, Michael remained on the sidewalk watching her leave with a thoughtful look. As the CEO of Tech Future, he knew he should keep his distance from employees. But there was something about Emily that touched him deeply, challenging his usual caution. As he walked to his own car, Michael found himself thinking about the future. A future that, for the first time in a long time, seemed full of new and exciting possibilities. The weeks following the dinner were like a dream for Emily. She and Michael began to meet regularly, discovering more things in common with each encounter and deepening their connection. After-work coffees turned into romantic dinners, walks through Central Park, and long conversations that stretched into the night. Michael was everything Emily had ever wanted in a partner: attentive, intelligent, good-humored, and above all, understanding of her demanding career. He seemed to have a deep knowledge of the challenges of the corporate world, always offering valuable advice that helped Emily navigate better through the complexities of her work at Tech Future. However, as they grew closer, Emily couldn't help but notice certain mysteries surrounding Michael. He was evasive when it came to specific details about his current work, often skillfully changing the subject when she asked more direct questions. Additionally, there were times when he seemed distant, as if carrying a weight he couldn't share. One Saturday night, as they walked hand in hand down Fifth Avenue after watching a movie, Emily decided to address the issue. "Michael," she began hesitantly, "you know you can trust me, right? Sometimes I feel like there's something you're not telling me." Michael stopped walking, turning to face her. His eyes, usually so warm, now seemed filled with concern. "Emily, He paused, as if carefully choosing his words. "There are things about me, about my work, that are complicated. I promise that one day I'll explain everything, but for now, can I just ask you to trust me?" Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. Part of her wanted to insist, to demand answers, but the pleading look in Michael's eyes made her back down. "Okay," she finally said. "I trust you. I just hope that when you're ready, you'll share with me whatever it is." Michael pulled her into a tight hug, kissing the top of her head. "Thank you for understanding," he murmured. "You have no idea how much this means to me." Despite this conversation, the following days brought a slight tension to the relationship. Emily found herself analyzing every word and gesture of Michael's, looking for clues about what he might be hiding. She tried to push away these concerns, focusing instead on his many wonderful qualities and the happiness she felt when they were together. Meanwhile, at work, Emily was thriving. Her new approaches, inspired in part by Michael's advice, were bearing fruit. She had been praised by her direct boss and even received an invitation to present her ideas at a high-level meeting with the board of directors. On the morning of the big meeting, Emily woke up early, a mix of nervousness and excitement bubbling in her chest. She carefully chose a navy blue suit that made her feel confident and professional. Before leaving home, she received a message from Michael. "Good luck today, my love. Remember, you are capable, intelligent, and have valuable ideas to share. Show them what you're made of." With a smile on her face and a warm heart, Emily set off for the office, determined to impress. The meeting room on the top floor of the Tech Future building was imposing, with a panoramic view of New York City. Emily took a deep breath before entering, adjusting her folder and mentally rehearsing her presentation one last time. As she entered the room, she greeted the executives present, recognizing some familiar faces and others she only knew from photos. Her heart was beating fast as she prepared to begin. It was then that the door opened once more and the last board member entered. Emily froze, her brain struggling to process what her eyes were seeing. It was Michael, wearing an impeccable suit and carrying an aura of authority she had never seen before. Michael, her Michael, entered the room as if he owned the place. And Emily realized with a shock he probably did. "Good morning, everyone," Michael said, his voice firm and professional. "I apologize for being late. Please, Miss Thompson, continue with your presentation." Emily felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Her mind was spinning with questions and conflicting emotions. How did she not know? How could he have hidden this from her? What did this mean for them? For a moment she thought she wouldn't be able to speak, that she would simply collapse right there. But then, her eyes met Michael's. In them she saw a mixture of guilt, encouragement, and something more. Love. Taking a deep breath, Emily found her voice. "Thank you, Mr. CEO," she said, proud that her voice didn't tremble. "As I was saying..." And so, with a heavy heart but her head held high, Emily began her presentation. She talked about innovation, marketing strategies, and how to improve communication between departments. Her words flowed with confidence, driven by a newly discovered determination to prove her worth not just as Michael's girlfriend, but as a competent professional in her own right. Throughout the presentation, she avoided looking directly at Michael, fearing that her emotions would betray her, but she could feel the weight of his gaze, observing her every move, every word. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the room erupted in applause. The directors surrounded her, asking questions and praising her ideas. Michael remained at a distance, his face a mask of professional neutrality. As soon as the meeting was adjourned, Emily quickly left the room, needing air and space to process what had happened. She had barely reached the elevator when she heard hurried footsteps behind her. "Emily, wait!" Michael's voice sounded, a mixture of plea and authority. She turned slowly, facing the man she loved, who now seemed like a stranger. "Why, Michael?" she asked, her voice low and trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she knew well. "I wanted to tell you, Emily, so many times, but the more time passed, the harder it got. I was afraid of losing what we had, of you seeing me differently." Emily shook her head, tears threatening to fall. "You didn't trust me all this time." "Please," Michael pleaded, taking a step towards her. "Let me explain. Not here, not now, but can we meet later? I promise to tell you everything, answer all your questions." Emily hesitated, her heart waging a battle between the hurt of betrayal and the love she felt for Michael. Finally, she nodded. "All right, tonight at our cafe, at 8. With that, she entered the elevator, leaving Michael behind. As the doors closed, Emily saw the expression of pain and regret on his face. She wondered if this revelation would be the end of everything they had built, or if somehow they would find a way to move forward together. The day that had begun with so much promise was now shrouded in uncertainty. Emily knew that the conversation she would have with Michael that night would change everything. It remained to be seen whether it would be for better or for worse. The hours that followed the meeting were a blur for Emily. She spent the rest of the day on autopilot, her body present in the office, but her mind far away, reliving every moment of the past few months with Michael in a new light. At 7:45 p.m., Emily found herself standing in front of the Perfect Aroma, the cafe where she and Michael had reunited for the first time. It seemed ironic that it would now be the setting for what could be the end of everything. Taking a deep breath, she entered. Michael was already there, sitting at the same corner table where they had talked on that fateful day. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes more pronounced than usual. When he saw Emily, he stood up abruptly, almost knocking over his coffee cup. "Emily," he said, his voice a mix of relief and apprehension. "Thank you for coming." She nodded stiffly, sitting across from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence heavy between them. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "Why, Michael?" she asked, her voice low but firm. "Why did you lie to me all this time?" Michael ran his hand over his face, a gesture that Emily now recognized as a sign of his discomfort. "I didn't lie, Emily. At least, not intentionally. I omitted the truth." "And what's the difference?" Emily retorted, her voice gaining a bitter tone. Michael sighed deeply. "At first, when we met in that parking lot, I didn't plan for things to go so far. I just wanted to help an employee who seemed to be having a tough day. But then what?" Emily pressed when he hesitated. "Then I fell in love with you," Michael said softly, his eyes meeting hers. "And the more I fell in love, the harder it became to tell the truth. I was afraid of losing what we had, of you seeing me differently if you knew who I really was." Emily felt her heart tighten at these words, but she forced herself to maintain composure. "You didn't trust me enough to give me the chance to decide for myself." "You're right," Michael admitted, the guilt evident in his voice. "I should have trusted you. I should have been honest from the beginning. So I'm sorry, Emily. More than I can express." Emily remained silent for a moment, processing his words. Part of her wanted to forgive him immediately, to hug him and say everything would be okay. But another part, the part that felt betrayed and deceived, couldn't let things go so easily. "How do you think I felt today, Michael?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Walking into that room, ready to give the most important presentation of my career, and discovering that the man I love, the man I trusted, is actually my boss, the CEO of the company." Michael closed his eyes, the pain evident on his face. "I know I hurt you, Emily. If I could go back—" "But you can't," Emily interrupted. "What's done is done. The question now is, what do we do from here?" Michael looked at her, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "What do you want to do?" Emily took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. "I don't know, Michael. Part of me wants to continue with you because what we have is special, but another part doesn't know if it can trust you again." "I understand," Michael said softly. "And I would do anything to regain your trust, Emily. Anything." "It's not just that," Emily continued. "There's also the professional issue. How can we continue our relationship when you are technically my boss?" Michael nodded, acknowledging the complexity of the situation. "I thought a lot about that today. If we decide to continue, I can step away from direct decisions that affect your department. We can establish clear boundaries between our personal and professional lives." Emily studied him for a moment. "And if it doesn't work out? If we break up, how would that affect my career?" "Your career is safe, Emily," Michael assured firmly. "Regardless of what happens between us, your work at Tech Future will always be evaluated on its merits, nothing more." There was a long silence as Emily pondered everything that had been said. Finally, she spoke. "I need time, Michael. Time to think, to process all of this." Michael nodded, disappointment clear in his eyes, but also understanding. "I understand. Take all the time you need, Emily. I'll be here when you're ready to talk again." Emily stood up, ready to leave, but hesitated. Despite all the hurt and confusion, she still loved him. Impulsively, she leaned in and gave Michael a soft kiss on the cheek. "Thank you for being honest now," she said softly. "It means a lot." With that, she left the cafe, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts and regrets. The days that followed were an emotional roller coaster for Emily. She oscillated between anger at Michael's lie and longing for the man who had become so important in her life. At work, she threw herself into her projects, using them as a welcome distraction from her emotional turmoil. A week after the revelation, Emily received an email from the board of directors. Her heart jumped when she saw Michael's name in the header. With trembling fingers, she opened the message. It was an official announcement. Due to the success of her presentation, Emily was being promoted to Special Projects Manager, a new position created specifically for her. The email emphasized that the decision had been unanimous among the directors, with Michael abstaining from the vote to avoid any appearance of favoritism. Emily stared at the screen, a mix of emotions flooding her. Pride that her work was being recognized, gratitude for Michael's integrity in abstaining from the decision, and a growing realization, despite everything, Michael truly believed in her and her potential. At that moment, Emily made her decision. She picked up the phone and typed a message to Michael. "Can we talk? I'm ready to try again. This time, no secrets." The response came almost immediately. "Of course, whenever and wherever you want." Emily smiled, feeling a weight being lifted from her shoulders. She knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, both personal and professional. But something in her heart told her it was worth trying. As she set the time and place to meet Michael, Emily felt hopeful for the first time in days. Maybe, just maybe, they could build something even stronger from the ruins of their crumbled secrets. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Whatever the outcome, Emily would face what came ahead with her head held high, stronger and wiser than before. The sun was setting over New York City, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. When Emily arrived at Central Park, she and Michael had agreed to meet there, a neutral and public location that offered the privacy needed for such an important conversation. Michael was already there, sitting on a bench overlooking the lake. As he saw her approach, he stood up, a mix of anxiety and hope in his eyes. "Hi," Emily said softly, stopping a few steps away from him. "Hi," Michael replied, his voice equally low. "Thank you for coming." For a moment, they stood in silence, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Finally, Emily spoke. "I thought a lot about us, about everything that happened," she began, her restless hands adjusting the strap of her bag. "And I came to the conclusion that I want to try again. With us." Michael's face lit up with relief and joy, but Emily raised a hand, signaling that she wasn't finished. "But," she continued, her voice firm, "things need to be different this time. We need to establish clear rules, both for our personal relationship and our professional interaction." Michael nodded emphatically. "Absolutely. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Emily. You set the rules." Emily took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "First, total honesty from now on, no secrets, no omissions. If something is bothering you or if there's something you think I should know, you tell me. Immediately." "I completely agree," Michael said without hesitation. "Second," Emily continued, "at work, we are strictly professional. No special treatment, no intimacies. You don't interfere in decisions that directly affect me, and I don't use our relationship to gain advantages." Michael nodded again. "I've already talked to the board about this. They agreed to create a special committee to oversee any decisions related to your career, ensuring total impartiality." Emily looked surprised but pleased with this information. "That's actually very good. Thank you for thinking of that." "And third," Michael asked, realizing she wasn't finished. Emily hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Third, we need time. Time to rebuild trust. To truly get to know each other this time, this means going slow, Michael. No grand romantic gestures or grandiose promises for now. Just us, learning to trust each other again." Michael took a step forward, extending his hand to Emily. After a moment of hesitation, she took it. "I accept all your conditions, Emily," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "And I want you to know that I will do everything in my power to earn your trust again. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I was a fool to risk that." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes, but she held them back. "It won't be easy, Michael. We have a long road ahead." "I know," he replied softly, "but you're worth every step of that road." With those words, they began to walk side by side through the park, talking openly about their fears, hopes, and expectations for the future. It was a new beginning for both of them, full of promises and challenges. In the weeks that followed, Emily and Michael worked hard to rebuild their relationship on more solid foundations. At work, they maintained a rigorous professional distance, surprising colleagues who had no idea of their personal involvement. Emily dove into her new role as Special Projects Manager, leading innovative initiatives that soon began to draw attention not just within Tech Future, but across the tech industry. Her success was entirely on her own merit, and this gave her a sense of pride and accomplishment that strengthened her confidence. Michael in turn impressed Emily with his commitment to keeping his word. He was meticulously transparent about all company decisions that could affect her, even indirectly. Outside of work, he proved to be patient and attentive, respecting Emily's desire to take things slow. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of tension, especially when the boundaries between personal and professional seemed blurred. One particularly difficult afternoon, Emily entered Michael's office, clearly frustrated. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. Michael looked at her with concern. "What happened?" "The Nexus project," Emily began, referring to an artificial intelligence initiative she was leading. "I just found out that the budget has been cut in half. Why didn't you tell me about this?" Michael frowned, confused. "But I didn't know about that. Who told you?" "Robert from finance," Emily answered, her voice still tense. "He said the decision came from above." Michael immediately picked up the phone, dialing a number. After a brief conversation, he hung up, turning to Emily with a serious expression. "It was a misunderstanding," he explained. "The budget cut was for the Phoenix project, not Nexus. Robert confused the names. I'll resolve this immediately." Emily felt relief flood her, but also a twinge of guilt for having doubted Michael so quickly. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I shouldn't have assumed—" Michael shook his head, gently interrupting her. "Don't apologize. You did exactly what you should do. You came directly to me with your concerns. This is how we build trust, Emily. by being open with each other, even in difficult moments. At that moment, Emily felt something shift inside her. The last barrier of mistrust she had kept erected began to crumble. She saw Michael not just as the man she loved, but as a partner she could truly trust. Impulsively, she leaned in and kissed him softly. It was their first kiss since the reconciliation, and it carried with it the promise of a new beginning. "Thank you," she whispered as she pulled away, "for being the man I always knew you were." Michael smiled, his eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you for giving me the chance to prove it." When Emily left Michael's office that afternoon, she felt lighter, more confident in their relationship than she had ever been. The challenges were still there, balancing personal and professional, dealing with work pressures, building a future together. But now she knew they could face everything as a team. Emily and Michael seemed to be living the dawn of a new era, an era of honesty, trust, and true love. And as they walked together out of the Tech Future building, hand in hand, they both knew that the best was yet to come. The months that followed brought a series of changes for both Emily and Michael. Tech Future was growing rapidly, expanding into new markets and developing innovative technologies. At the center of this growth was Project Nexus, led by Emily, which promised to revolutionize how companies used artificial intelligence. One Monday morning, Emily was surprised by an email summoning her to an urgent meeting with the board of directors. Her heart raced as she headed to the meeting room on the top floor. As she entered, she found Michael and the other directors already seated, all with serious expressions. "Emily, thank you for coming so quickly," Michael began, his voice professional and distant, as it always was during work meetings. "We have a situation that requires your immediate attention." One of the directors, a middle-aged woman named Barbara, took the floor. "We've received a proposal from Tech Global, our biggest competitor. They want to buy Project Nexus." Emily felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Project Nexus was her baby, the result of months of hard work and dedication. The idea of selling it seemed unthinkable. "How much are they offering?" Emily asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. $200 million, another director, Richard, answered. "It's a tempting offer, especially considering that the project is still in the development phase." Emily looked at Michael, seeking some sign of his opinion, but his face remained impassive. She knew this was one of those situations where he couldn't directly influence her decision. "What's your opinion, Emily?" Barbara asked. "You're the closest person to this project. What do you think we should do?" Emily took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. "Project Nexus has the potential to be much more valuable than $200 million, she began. "We're not just developing a new technology, we're creating a new paradigm for artificial intelligence. If we continue development, I believe we can revolutionize not just our company, but the entire industry." She paused, looking at each of the directors before continuing. "Moreover, selling Nexus now would be like giving up before even starting the race. We have the team, we have the knowledge, and we have the vision. We need to have the courage to see this through to the end." A silence followed her words. Emily could feel the weight of her decision, knowing that she was potentially refusing an offer that could change the company's trajectory. Finally, Michael spoke. "I think we all agree that Emily's opinion carries significant weight in this decision. Let's vote. Who is in favor of keeping Project Nexus and continuing its development internally?" To Emily's relief and surprise, the majority of the directors raised their hands. Michael was the last to vote, his yes sealing the decision. "It's decided then," he announced. "We'll refuse Tech Global's offer and continue with Nexus's development. Emily, we trust you to lead this project to the end." When the meeting ended, Emily felt a mix of exhaustion and euphoria. She had defended her project and her vision, and the board had trusted her. It was a victory, but also an enormous responsibility. Later that day, as she worked in her office, there was a soft knock on her door. It was Michael. "Can I come in?" he asked, his tone now very different from what it had been in the meeting room. Emily nodded, inviting him to sit. "You were amazing today," Michael said, a proud smile on his face. "The way you defended the project, how you presented your vision, it was impressive." Emily felt her cheeks flush with the compliment. "Thank you, but it was scary. For a moment, I thought we were going to lose Nexus." Michael shook his head. "I never doubted you, and that's why I abstained from giving my opinion during the meeting. I wanted everyone to see your competence for themselves, without any influence from me." Emily smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude and affection for Michael. That means a lot to me, knowing that you trust me like this. Always, Michael replied softly. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. Actually, there's something else I wanted to discuss with you. Something personal. Emily felt her heart race. What is it? Michael leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers. These past few months, seeing you grow professionally, facing challenges, making tough decisions, made me realize something. Emily, I love you. More than that, I admire and respect you not just as my partner, but as a brilliant professional. He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. What I'm trying to say is, would you like to move in with me? To really start a life together? Emily was speechless for a moment, Michael's proposal taking her by surprise. They had made a lot of progress in their relationship, rebuilding trust and strengthening their bond. But this was a big step. Michael, she began, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. You don't have to answer now, Michael said quickly, noticing her hesitation. I know it's a big decision, just think about it, okay? Emily nodded, a soft smile forming on her lips. I will think about it. And Michael, I love you too. When Michael left her office, Emily found herself looking out the window, observing the city sprawling below. Her life had changed so much in the past few months. New professional challenges, a deeper and more mature relationship with Michael, and now this new proposal. She knew she had an important decision to make, not just about living with Michael, but about the future she wanted to build for herself. Project Nexus, her rising career, her relationship with Michael, everything was intertwined in a way she could never have predicted. As the sun set over New York City, Emily felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension about the future. Whatever her decision, she knew she was on the threshold of a new phase in her life, a phase full of promises, challenges, and above all, endless possibilities. The days following Michael's proposal were an emotional roller coaster for Emily. On one hand, her heart rejoiced at the idea of building a life together, of waking up every day next to the man she loved. On the other, a persistent voice in her mind reminded her of the risks, both personal and professional. One Saturday afternoon, Emily decided to visit her mother, Mrs. Thompson, seeking advice. The small apartment in Brooklyn, where Emily grew up, was full of memories and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. "Mum," Emily began as the two sat at the kitchen table, "Michael asked me to move in with him." Mrs. Thompson raised her eyebrows, a smile forming on her face. "And what did you say, honey?" "I said I needed to think," Emily replied, twirling the coffee cup between her hands. "It's a big step, Mum, and with everything that's happening at work." Mrs. Thompson reached out, covering Emily's hand affectionately. "Sweetheart, do you remember what I always told you when you were little and afraid to try new things?" Emily smiled, remembering. "That fear only exists up to the door. After we open it, we discover it wasn't so scary after all." "Exactly," Mrs. Thompson nodded. "Emily, I've seen how you've grown in these past few months. As a professional, as a woman, you've faced challenges that would have made many give up. And you know why? Because you're strong, intelligent, and brave." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes at her mother's words. "What I'm trying to say," Mrs. Thompson continued, "is that no matter what decision you make, I know it'll be the right one for you. Trust yourself, my dear. You have everything you need to be happy, whether living with Michael or not." That conversation with her mother was a turning point for Emily. In the days that followed, she reflected deeply on her life, her goals, and her fears. Finally, on a Thursday night, she invited Michael over for dinner at her apartment. When Michael arrived, Emily greeted him with a soft kiss and a nervous smile. They had dinner, talking about work and everyday things, but there was a palpable tension in the air, an unspoken expectation. After the meal, as they sat on the couch with glasses of wine, Emily finally gathered the courage to speak. "Michael," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I've thought a lot about your proposal." Michael straightened up, his eyes fixed on her, waiting anxiously. "I love you," Emily continued, "and the idea of building a life with you makes me happier than I can express. But—" Michael's face fell a little at the but he remained silent, letting her continue. "But I need to be sure we're doing this for the right reasons," Emily explained. "I don't want it to be a rushed or emotional decision. I want it to be the natural next step in our journey together. Michael nodded slowly, processing her words. I understand, Emily, and I respect your caution. What do you suggest? Emily took a deep breath before answering. That we take it slow, that we start by spending more time together, staying at each other's places more often. Let's see what it's like in practice to share our spaces and our routines, and if everything goes well in a few months, we can take the next step. A wide smile spread across Michael's face. Emily, that's perfect. It's exactly the kind of thoughtful and mature approach I admire in you. I completely agree. Relief flooded Emily, and she leaned in to hug Michael, feeling as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. In the weeks that followed, Emily and Michael began to implement their plan. They alternated between staying at her apartment and his, learning each other's habits, discovering the small quirks that only reveal themselves in daily coexistence. There were moments of adjustment, of course. Emily discovered that Michael had a habit of leaving wet towels on the bed, while Michael learned that Emily could be a bit obsessive about organizing the refrigerator. But each small challenge, each conversation to resolve these differences, only served to strengthen their relationship further. Meanwhile, at work, Project Nexus was gaining more and more momentum. Emily's decision not to sell to Tech Global proved to be the right one, as new breakthroughs were made almost daily. The team was motivated, working at a frenzied but productive pace. One afternoon, while Emily was immersed in codes and algorithms, there was a knock on her door. It was Robert, from the finance department. Emily, do you have a minute? He asked, looking nervous. Of course, Robert, what's up? Robert entered, closing the door behind him. It's about Project Nexus. I think I've discovered something you need to see. He placed a folder on Emily's desk, opening it to reveal a series of financial reports. I've been reviewing the project's numbers and, well, there are some discrepancies I can't explain. Emily frowned, examining the documents. As her eyes scanned the numbers, her heart began to race. There were, indeed, some strange transactions, values that didn't add up, expenses that seemed inflated. This can't be right, Emily murmured, more to herself than to Robert. I know, Robert replied, his voice low. And there's more. I traced some of these transactions and, Emily, they seem to lead to an offshore account linked to one of the directors. Emily felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. If what Robert was saying was true, it meant there was corruption at the heart of Tech Future, possibly involving the project she was leading. Robert, this is very serious, she said, struggling to maintain her composure. We need to investigate this thoroughly before making any accusations. Robert nodded, seeming relieved that Emily was taking his concerns seriously. What do we do now? Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just discovered. This wasn't just a financial problem, it was an ethical crisis that could shake the foundations of the company she loved. Now, she said, her voice firm despite the turmoil inside her, we investigate, discreetly. And when we have all the information, we'll make the right decision no matter how difficult it may be. As Robert left her office, Emily found herself facing a new and unexpected challenge, a challenge that would test not only her professional skills, but also her personal integrity, and possibly her relationship with Michael. The sun was setting over New York City, casting long shadows through her office window. Emily knew she was about to enter turbulent waters, but she was determined to navigate them with the same courage and determination that had brought her this far. Taking a deep breath, she picked up the phone. There was work to be done, and she was ready to face whatever came her way. The weeks following the discovery of the financial irregularities were the most intense and challenging of Emily's life. Together with Robert, she spent countless hours discreetly investigating each suspicious transaction, each misplaced number. What they discovered was even worse than they had initially imagined. The evidence pointed to an elaborate scheme of embezzlement, involving not just one, but 3 of Tech Future's directors. Project Nexus, with its inflated budget and innovative nature, had become the perfect vehicle for hiding illicit transactions. Emily found herself facing a monumental ethical dilemma. Exposing the scheme would potentially destroy the reputation of the company she loved so much and in which she had invested so much of herself. On the other hand, staying silent would make her complicit in a crime. On a particularly difficult night, after another day of exhausting investigations, Emily arrived home to find Michael preparing dinner. The domestic scene, so common in recent months, now seemed surreal given the weight of the secret she was carrying. Are you okay?" Michael asked, noticing her worried expression. "You've been so distant lately." Emily felt the tears she had been holding back for weeks finally overflow. Between sobs, she told Michael everything: the irregularities, the investigation, her suspicions. Michael listened in silence, his face a mask of shock and concern. When Emily finished, he wrapped her in a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry you've been going through this alone," he murmured, "but I'm proud of you for doing the right thing. Tomorrow, we'll resolve this together." The next morning, Emily and Michael arrived early at Tech Future. With Robert, they presented all the evidence to the company's ethics board. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, questioning, and difficult decisions. The 3 directors involved in the scheme were immediately suspended, and the authorities were notified. Tech Future would face difficult days ahead, but the integrity of its leadership in dealing with the situation transparently was crucial in maintaining the trust of investors and employees. Amidst the chaos, Project Nexus emerged as a beacon of hope. Free from financial manipulations, the project's true potential could be assessed. It was even more promising than initially thought. Weeks passed. The dust began to settle, and a new order was established at Tech Future. In a board meeting, Michael made a surprising announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, after careful consideration, I've decided it's time to pass the torch. Tech Future needs new leadership, someone who can guide it into the future with integrity and vision. That's why I'm nominating Emily Thompson as the company's new CEO." An astonished silence fell over the room, followed by an explosion of applause. Emily, caught completely by surprise, looked at Michael with a mixture of shock and gratitude. In the months that followed, Emily assumed her new role with the same determination and ethics that had always characterized her. Under her leadership, Tech Future not only recovered from the scandal, but flourished. Project Nexus was launched with great success, revolutionizing the AI industry as Emily had always known it would. Michael, free from the pressures of corporate leadership, decided to dedicate himself to philanthropic projects, using his experience to help ethical startups grow. On a Sunday afternoon, almost a year after the events that changed their lives, Emily and Michael were sitting on the porch of their new home, a place they had chosen together, a symbol of their commitment to each other. "You know," Emily said, looking at the New York City skyline, "a year ago I could never have imagined where we'd be today." Michael smiled, taking her hand. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it?" Emily nodded, reflecting on everything they had been through. "You know what I realized? That all those challenges, all those difficulties, they didn't weaken us. They made us stronger, as individuals and as a couple." "It's true," Michael agreed, "and looking back, I wouldn't change anything. Every moment brought us here." At that moment, as if the universe wanted to underscore their words, Emily felt a movement in her belly. She smiled, placing her hand on her slightly rounded stomach. "Seems like someone agrees," she said, laughing softly. Michael placed his hand over hers, his eyes shining with love and expectation. In a few months, they would welcome their first child, son or daughter, into the world. "You know," Michael said, his voice soft, "when we met in that parking lot, I thought I was just helping a stressed employee. Little did I know I was meeting the woman who would change my life." Emily leaned in to kiss him softly, and I thought I was getting into the wrong car. But actually I was getting on the right path. As the sun set over New York City, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Emily and Michael remained embraced, grateful for the path they had traveled and eager for the future they would build together. Their story, which had begun with a chance encounter, had transformed into a journey of love, growth, and overcoming. And now, with a new chapter about to begin with the arrival of their baby, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, stronger, wiser, and more in love than ever. The wind blew gently, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings and infinite possibilities. And in that perfect moment, Emily and Michael knew with absolute certainty that the best was yet to come.